A drizzle of cold rain fell steadily over central London that morning, soaking through Ava Morales' threadbare navy trenchcoat as she waited on a bustling sidewalk near Oxford Street. The damp chill seeped into her bones even as she lifted her arm, shielding her face from the falling droplets. Yellow cabs and black London taxis whizzed by, their tires splashing puddles of rainwater onto the pavement. "Come on, please," she murmured under her breath, anxiously checking her vintage wristwatch. It was 8:27 a.m., and with less than half an hour remaining to catch the crucial interview at Ascendant Enterprises, a chance that could change everything for her, each second felt as if it was slipping away into the relentless grey drizzle. Just then, a sleek black taxi slowed near the curb. Ava's heart leapt with hope. She stepped forward eagerly, reaching out as if to board the cab herself, but in a single, fleeting moment, her hope was dashed. A sharply dressed gentleman in a tailored charcoal suit slid into the taxi before she could reach the door. Frustration bubbled up as she let out an exasperated sigh and pulled out her smartphone. No ride-sharing vehicles appeared on the app, and she knew that attempting to brave the underground at this hour would cut her journey dangerously close. "Are you kidding me?" she groaned under her breath, her heart pounding with a mix of anxiety and urgency as she calculated the rapidly shrinking window of opportunity. Just as she was about to turn toward the nearest bus stop, something unexpected on the rain-slicked pavement caught her attention. A disturbance among the crowd made her glance downward. There, not far from a street lamp, a man in a dark grey suit staggered unsteadily. One hand clutched his chest while his other arm flailed weakly, and though his expensive attire and slicked-back dark hair suggested a man accustomed to power and wealth, there was an unmistakable fragility in the way he swayed. Before Ava could process what was happening, the man's body crumpled onto the wet sidewalk. For an instant, time seemed to stop. Ava's breath hitched, and she hesitated as the indifferent flow of pedestrians passed by without so much as a glance. Was it that they were too preoccupied, or had someone assumed someone else would take action? Her fingers tightened around the strap of her leather bag. Part of her screamed to continue toward her interview, the opportunity she'd been chasing for months. But another, more compassionate voice urged her forward. The man's labored gasp, weak and pained, broke through her indecision. Without another thought, Ava spun around and dashed toward the fallen stranger. Kneeling on the rain-soaked pavement, she crouched by his side and called out, "Sir, can you hear me?" His shallow breathing was barely audible over the patter of the rain, and a sheen of sweat glistened on his forehead despite the chill. Up close, Ava could see every detail: the chiseled jawline, the slight furrow of his brow, as if he were unused to showing weakness. "Help," he murmured, barely coherent. Ava's hands trembled as she gently grasped his wrist, feeling the faint but reassuring thump of a heartbeat beneath her fingers. "You're going to be all right," she whispered, more to bolster her own resolve than to comfort him. Fumbling for her phone with shaking fingers, Ava quickly dialed 999. "I have a gentleman, mid-40s, who's collapsed on Regent Street near St. Martin's. He's conscious but very weak, possibly experiencing a cardiac episode. Please send an ambulance immediately." The operator's calm, measured voice reassured her that help was on its way. With a deep, shaky exhale, Ava looked around. The rain continued unabated, but she knew that she couldn't abandon him, not yet. She carefully shrugged off her coat and used it to cushion his head, shielding him from the damp, cold pavement. For a long moment the man blinked slowly, his piercing blue eyes now filled with confusion and vulnerability locking onto hers. "Just leave me," he murmured weakly, voice barely above a whisper. Ava couldn't allow him to be left alone. "No, I'm not leaving you," she retorted softly, her voice resolute even as the sounds of hurried footsteps and indifferent chatter swirled around them. People had come and gone, too busy or too numb to intervene. But Ava's heart told her that some lives were worth every risk, even if it meant jeopardizing her own chance at success. The sound of an approaching taxi reminded her of the time she might lose forever. Yet as the minutes dragged on, she realized that if she ran now, she might still make it, but only by leaving the stranger behind. Her pulse pounded in her ears as she hesitated, and every second stretched like an eternity. In that split second, she felt the weight of a decision far greater than any professional opportunity she had ever encountered. The pounding of his feeble heartbeat beneath her trembling fingers was a powerful reminder that life itself was far more fragile and precious than a mere career break. Then, piercing through the ambient clamor of the city, the wail of sirens reached her ears. Within moments, an ambulance screeched to a halt with flashing red and blue lights that cut through the dull London morning. 2 paramedics hurried out, their movements precise as they assessed the situation. "He just collapsed," Ava explained in a rushed tone as the paramedics gently lifted him onto a stretcher. "I'm not entirely sure. Maybe a heart issue." One of the paramedics, an older man with calm eyes, nodded in quiet approval. "It's good you stayed with him," he said. "This could have ended much worse without your help." Relief mingled with dread inside Ava, for as the paramedic secured him in the ambulance, her watch now read 8:56 a.m. The realization struck her like a blow. She was supposed to be inside Ascendant Enterprises at least 5 minutes ago for the executive assistant interview that might have been her one chance at a breakthrough. Her stomach clenched in despair. Without a moment to spare, Ava bolted to the entrance of Ascendant Enterprises, sprinting up the stone steps with her heart thudding furiously in her chest. The revolving glass doors of the building opened onto an immaculate modern lobby. Polished marble floors stretched beneath towering ceilings, and a magnificent chandelier cast a soft golden glow over the space. The receptionist, a woman in a sharp charcoal blazer, barely looked up as Ava, drenched and disheveled, hurried past with an anxious plea. I'm here for the executive assistant interview," Ava panted, her voice strained and her eyes brimming with desperation as she grasped the counter for support. Her soaked hair clung to her forehead, and her shoes squeaked against the marble floor with every hurried step. After a long, tense pause, the receptionist finally raised an arched eyebrow. "Your name is Ava Morales, correct?" she asked coolly, typing quickly on her keyboard. A brief silence followed, as the receptionist's gaze flickered over Ava's details on the screen. Then, in a tone both detached and regretful, she said, "I'm sorry, Ms. Morales. The interviews ended 30 minutes ago." The words hit Ava like a crushing blow. "No, please, wait," she stammered, voice trembling as she tried to explain. "I had an emergency. I helped someone who collapsed on the street. I couldn't just leave him there." The receptionist's smile was tight and professional, the kind that dismissed any plea for understanding. "I understand, but Mr. Sinclair, our hiring manager, was very clear about punctuality. The final candidates have already been selected." Desperation welled up inside Ava. "Please, just let me talk to him for a moment. I promise I won't take up much of his time." After what felt like an eternity of hesitation, the receptionist sighed, picked up the phone and dialed an extension. "Mr. Sinclair, I have a candidate here. Miss Morales, she missed her time slot, but is requesting a brief moment of your time." A brief pause on the line was followed by a clipped reply. "Understood." Hanging up, the receptionist turned back to Ava. "He'll see you, but only for a moment." A flash of relief coursed through Ava as she was led down a long corridor toward a minimalist office. Inside, behind a sleek glass desk, sat Mr. Sebastian Carling, the head of human resources. He was in his early 40s, impeccably dressed, and exuded an air of authority mixed with barely concealed impatience. "Miss Morales," he greeted curtly, gesturing for her to take a seat in the chair opposite him. "You missed your interview." Ava swallowed hard, struggling to steady her racing thoughts. "Yes, sir. I had an emergency. Someone collapsed on the street and I stayed until the paramedics arrived. I know I was late, but I can't just ignore what happened." Sebastian's dark eyes narrowed slightly as he studied the way her fingers tapped nervously on the edge of the desk. "That's admirable," he conceded. "But let me ask you something. If you were already employed here and faced an urgent deadline, yet chose to stop and help a stranger, what do you think would happen?" Ava hesitated, the weight of the question sinking into her very soul. I would do the right thing," she replied softly. "I'd communicate immediately with my team, find a way to cover my responsibilities. I would never deliberately let a duty go unattended." He nodded slowly, though his expression remained inscrutable. "This position demands absolute reliability," he continued. "Our executives make decisions that affect millions every day. If your absence, even for a moment, results in a missed opportunity, it could cost us dearly." Humiliation and frustration swirled inside Ava as she struggled to find the words. So, I lose my chance because I stopped to help, she whispered, voice breaking. Sebastian's gaze softened ever so slightly, though his tone remained measured. We have hundreds of applicants, and every one of them must make sacrifices to prove their commitment. You made a choice. A moral choice. But it was not the right one for this company. With her heart sinking, Ava could only murmur, "Thank you for your time." Rising slowly from the chair, she gathered her things, leaving the office with a sense of crushing defeat and despair. Each step toward the exit felt heavier than the last, as if her dreams were dissolving into the drizzle outside. Exiting the building, Ava paused on the rain-washed pavement, staring up at the gleaming glass facade of Ascendant Enterprises, the very building she had envisioned as the gateway to a brighter future. For years, she had labored in dead-end jobs and juggled multiple part-time gigs while relentlessly pursuing the career that meant everything to her. Now, she was forced to reckon with the bitter reality that she might have just lost her one shot at change. With trembling fingers hovering over her phone, tempted to check other job listings yet unwilling to give in to despair, she heard her phone buzz. A call from an unknown number made her hesitate, but she answered cautiously. "Hello?" she said softly. "Is this Ava Morales?" came a gentle female voice on the other end. "This is St. Athelstan's Hospital. The gentleman you assisted this morning, he's regained consciousness and has asked to see you." Ava's breath caught in her throat as she listened. Her eyes darted from the towering Ascendant Enterprises building back to the busy city streets. The interview was now a lost dream, but in its place, another path was opening, one that hinted at an entirely different future. With hesitant determination, she stepped back into the drizzle and made her way toward the hospital, where hope and destiny awaited. Inside St. Athelstan's Hospital, the air smelled faintly of antiseptic, and the sound of busy footsteps and quiet chatter filled the corridors. Nurses in crisp uniforms hurried past, while doctors conferred in low, urgent tones. Ava approached the reception desk and cleared her throat. "Hi. I got a call regarding a patient who asked for me. I assisted him this morning when he collapsed on Regent Street." The receptionist, a woman with kindly eyes and efficient mannerisms, checked her notes. "That would be Mr. Carling, room 412, just down the hall to your right." Ava nodded, grateful and anxious, and followed the directions with steady determination. When she reached the door to room 412, she hesitated momentarily, her hand trembling as she raised it to knock lightly before pushing the door open. Inside, lying on a hospital bed in a neatly arranged room, was the man she had helped, a man whose identity she had only partially known in that frantic moment on the rain-soaked street. Now, as his eyes fluttered open, he looked up at her with clear, piercing blue eyes that were at once grateful and guarded. "You came," he said, his voice softer than she remembered, tinged with surprise and gratitude. "I wasn't expecting you." Ava hesitated a moment, then stepped closer. "I couldn't leave you," she replied simply, her voice steadier than she felt. He shifted slightly on the bed, adjusting the IV drip attached to his arm, and then, with an effort to smile, he said, "I assume you missed your interview because of me?" His tone was matter-of-fact, neither reproachful nor overly apologetic. Ava exhaled, leaning against the side of the bed. "Yes, but I don't regret it. I helped because life is more important than any job. I can find another opportunity if need be, but if something had happened to you, if you had died, there wouldn't be another chance." For a long moment, silence hung in the air as he considered her words. Then a low, warm chuckle escaped him, softening his earlier gravity. "Not many would say it that way," he murmured. "You truly have a kind heart." Ava's cheeks warmed with a mixture of embarrassment and pride as she sat on the edge of the chair by his bed. "I didn't really have a choice," she said, almost to herself. "I couldn't just walk away." The man, now known to her as Sebastian Carling, studied her intently. "What if I told you," he said quietly, "that today might have been the beginning of something very unexpected?" His voice carried a quiet authority, tempered by a vulnerability that was rare in a man of his stature. Ava's heart skipped a beat. She had assumed her actions that morning had cost her dearly, yet here he was, alive, grateful, and hinting at a future neither of them could have anticipated. Later that day, after the hospital had quieted and the drizzle had lessened to a mere mist, Ava left St. Athelstan's Hospital. The chill of the rain was gradually giving way to the cool embrace of a fading morning, and the city seemed to pulse with renewed energy. The door of Ascendant Enterprises was still closed to her, but the memory of the man she'd helped, Sebastian Carling, lingered in her thoughts. Every step along the wet pavements of London reminded her that sometimes fate intervenes in the most unforeseen ways, and that a single act of kindness might set in motion a series of events that could alter one's destiny forever. A few days later, as Ava sipped a lukewarm cup of tea in her modest flat in Camden, she received another unexpected call. The phone rang, startling her from her reverie, and when she answered, a polite male voice said, "Good morning, Ms. Morales. This is Mr. Carling." Ava's heart raced as she listened to him explain that he had been thinking about the events of that rainy morning, and about her. "I'd like to meet you again, if you're available," he said. "There's something I'd like to discuss, and it's important." With her heart in her throat, Ava agreed to meet him at a quaint cafe near the river, a setting far removed from the chaos of the city streets that day. At the cafe, with its fogged windows and rustic wooden tables, Sebastian waited in a corner booth, his gaze intent and thoughtful. He was no longer in the rigid professional attire she remembered from the hospital, but had exchanged it for a smart, casual look that made him seem more approachable. "Thank you for coming, Ava," he began as she sat across from him. "I've been meaning to tell you that your actions that day were remarkable. You showed compassion and courage when it would have been so easy to simply move on. He paused, searching her eyes for understanding. "I want to offer you an opportunity, not just another job, but a chance to be part of something bigger than either of us anticipated." Ava's mind raced as she tried to process his words. The interview at Ascendant Enterprises had been her one shot, and she had been sure that she had lost it forever by stopping to help a stranger. And yet, here was Sebastian, offering her something that felt almost too generous to be true. "What do you mean?" she asked quietly. I was only trying to do what was right." Sebastian smiled, a slow, knowing smile that warmed his features. "Sometimes doing the right thing leads us down unexpected paths. I've been impressed by your resolve and dedication, even in the face of personal sacrifice. I'd like to invite you to join my team, initially on a trial basis, to prove that you belong among us. I'm offering you a chance to work with me directly as my executive assistant." The words hung in the air like a fragile promise. Ava's heart pounded, not with the anxiety of the lost interview, but with a cautious hope. I appreciate the offer," she said, searching his eyes for any hint of insincerity. "But I must be sure that I'm not just being given a favor because of what happened that day." Sebastian leaned forward, his voice gentle yet firm. "Consider it a challenge. Prove that your integrity, resourcefulness, and passion belong here. Don't see it as charity. It's a recognition of your ability to make difficult choices, even when the stakes are high." For a long moment, silence settled between them. Then, with a decisive nod, Ava murmured, "I accept." Thus began a new chapter in Ava's life, one filled with uncertainty, determination, and the promise of redemption. The very next morning, instead of waiting for a reapplication process or another round of interviews, Ava found herself standing once more before the imposing glass facade of Ascendant Enterprises. This time, however, she was not a desperate job candidate clinging to a lost dream. She was now the CEO's special case, a young woman determined to prove that she belonged in a world where every decision carried enormous consequences. Inside the building, Ava navigated the corridors with a mixture of trepidation and resolve. Whispers and sideways glances followed her as she passed by interns from elite universities and candidates with impeccable credentials. "She got in on merit," one hushed voice remarked, while another muttered, "I can't believe the CEO would take a chance on someone like her." But Ava ignored the murmurs. She was determined to demonstrate her worth not by words, but by the strength of her work and her unwavering commitment to excellence. From the moment she joined Sebastian's team, Ava immersed herself in the demanding rhythm of the corporate world. Each morning brought new challenges, projects to complete, reports to analyze, and decisions that affected not only her own career, but the fate of entire multi-million-pound deals. Late nights became a constant companion as she burned the midnight oil, reviewing financial projections, devising creative strategies, and ensuring that every detail was perfect. Her colleagues, many of whom had been groomed in the hallowed halls of prestigious institutions, eyed her with a mix of skepticism and grudging respect. Yet, despite their initial doubts, Ava's performance soon began to speak for itself. One particularly memorable evening, when most of the office had emptied and only the quiet hum of computers and the occasional rustle of papers remained, Ava was poring over a set of spreadsheets in her small cubicle. The office was dark except for the soft glow of her desk lamp and the distant city lights filtering through the tall windows. She was so focused on her task that she almost didn't notice the sound of footsteps approaching until a familiar voice interrupted her concentration. "Still burning the midnight oil, Eva?" It was Sebastian, casually leaning against the doorframe, his tie loosened and sleeves rolled up, a rare glimpse of vulnerability that caught her off guard. Ava looked up, startled yet composed. "I suppose I'm trying to prove that I belong," she replied with a wry smile, masking the exhaustion and the fluttering in her chest. Sebastian's gaze softened for just a moment before he said, "You already do." There was a charged silence between them, a delicate balance of professional respect and something more personal that neither dared to fully acknowledge. For a fleeting second, Ava wondered if the man who had once seemed so distant and unapproachable could possibly be letting down his guard, if only a little, just for her. As the weeks turned into months, Ava's work ethic and unyielding determination began to yield tangible results. She was soon entrusted with critical projects, one of which involved presenting financial projections for a major upcoming deal that had the potential to define the company's future. In the tense atmosphere of the boardroom, where every word carried immense weight, Ava stood before a panel of senior executives. The room was filled with an expectant silence as she detailed a restructuring proposal for a deal that was on the verge of collapse. Her suggestion to offer a performance-based payout model instead of requiring a hefty upfront investment was bold, innovative, and, as she argued, a smart way to mitigate risk, while strengthening the client's trust in Ascendant Enterprises. The silence in the room was palpable as the executives exchanged glances, weighing her words against the stakes of the multi-million-pound project. Finally, Sebastian, who had been silently observing from the far end of the table, allowed himself a small, approving smile. "That is an excellent idea," he declared, his voice cutting through the tension like a knife. The deal, which had hung by a thread moments earlier, was salvaged that very day. For Ava, the success of her proposal was more than a professional triumph. It was a validation of her instincts, her willingness to take risks, and her commitment to doing what was right, even when the odds were stacked against her. In the aftermath of that critical win, as the rest of the team celebrated with quiet nods and congratulatory murmurs, Sebastian found Ava alone in the hallway. His tone was subdued, almost intimate, as he said, "You impressed me today." Startled by his rare praise, Ava could only manage a small, self-deprecating laugh. "I just did what I thought was right," she replied, her voice a mixture of humility and defiance. Sebastian's eyes, those clear blue eyes that seemed to see right into her soul, held a steady intensity as he said, "I want you on my team permanently, no longer as an intern, but as my executive assistant." For a moment, Ava was stunned into silence. The offer was not only a professional milestone, but also an acknowledgement of her extraordinary character, a recognition that she had earned not through privilege or connections, but through a single, courageous act of compassion on a rainy London morning. Though the new role would come with its own challenges and an unspoken closeness that made every interaction charged with possibility, Ava's heart surged with a mixture of excitement and trepidation. "I accept," she said simply, her voice steady even as her mind raced through the implications of this dramatic turn in her life. In the ensuing months, Ava found herself navigating a dual existence, a rigorous professional life where every decision was scrutinized, and a private realm where the growing attraction between her and Sebastian became increasingly palpable. The office, once an intimidating arena of power suits and relentless schedules, gradually transformed into a space where mutual respect and unspoken understanding blossomed into something more profound. Despite the inherent risks of mixing personal feelings with business, Neither of them could deny the magnetic pull that had taken root between them. There were quiet moments in the midst of long workdays when their eyes would meet across a crowded conference room, when a casual touch on the arm during a hectic meeting sent sparks of electricity through Ava's veins, or when, late at night, Sebastian would linger at his desk long after everyone else had left, his gaze fixed on a photograph of a smiling Ava tucked away in his briefcase. Even as Ava strove to prove herself among colleagues who questioned her credentials, she couldn't help but notice the way Sebastian's interactions with her straddled the line between mentor and something far more intimate. A delicate dance of professional guidance and personal warmth that left her both inspired and conflicted. One evening, as the office emptied and the corridors fell silent, Ava was gathering her things when she heard footsteps approaching. Turning, she found Sebastian standing in the doorway of her small office, his normally impeccable composure softened by a trace of hesitation. "You should go home, Ava," he said, his tone gentle yet laced with an uncharacteristic worry. "It's late." Ava raised an eyebrow, feeling an inexplicable tug at her heart. "You should be heading home too," she replied softly. For a long moment, neither spoke, and the quiet between them was charged with the promise of something unspoken. Finally, Sebastian stepped closer, his voice barely above a whisper. "I can't keep pretending," he admitted, the vulnerability in his tone stark against the backdrop of his usual reserve. "I tried to keep my distance, thinking it was the right thing to do, but the truth is, I don't want that distance between us anymore." Ava's breath caught in her throat as she met his steady gaze. In that moment, every unspoken word, every stolen glance from the past few months seemed to crystallize into a single, undeniable truth. She had been falling for him all along. "I don't want to be apart from you either," she replied, her voice trembling with both relief and trepidation. For the first time, the professional barriers that had long separated them began to crumble, revealing a connection that was as dangerous as it was exhilarating. They knew the risks, how such an entanglement might be seen by colleagues, and how the balance between work and personal life could be upended. But in that quiet, lonely office, it seemed that nothing else mattered except the fragile, luminous hope of what could be. As the weeks turned into months, the seasons shifted outside the towering windows of Ascendant Enterprises, and Ava's life began to take on the contours of a bittersweet fairy tale. A tale of sacrifice, resilience, and the courage to follow one's heart against all odds. Despite the pressure of her responsibilities, she found moments of quiet joy in stolen glances with Sebastian in the hallway, in whispered conversations after long days, and in the shared determination to succeed in a world that often valued conformity over compassion. Yet, as with every great story, the path ahead was fraught with unexpected twists. A major investment deal, one that had been the cornerstone of the company's future, suddenly collapsed due to unforeseen complications. Tension gripped the boardroom as senior executives scrambled to mitigate the fallout, and a palpable sense of crisis descended upon the company. It was in that moment of uncertainty that Ava found her voice once again. In the midst of heated debate and anxious silence, she stood up, her hands trembling yet determined, and proposed an alternative restructuring strategy. "What if we approach this by offering a performance-based payout rather than a fixed, upfront investment?" she suggested, her voice carrying the weight of both logic and hope. The room fell silent as her colleagues digested her proposal. One of the executives hesitated, questioning the risk of such a radical shift, but Ava continued, detailing how this approach might not only salvage the deal but also fortify the client's trust in Ascendant Enterprises. Sebastian's eyes narrowed as he watched the exchange, and then, with a slow nod of approval, he said, "That is an excellent idea." In that moment, the boardroom's tension began to ease, replaced by cautious optimism. Later, when the crisis had been averted and the office was quiet again, Sebastian found Ava in the corridor. "You impress me today," he said quietly. Ava's heart pounded as she replied, "I only did what I believed was right." Sebastian's gaze softened as he added, "I want you on my team permanently." With those words, he offered her a permanent position as his executive assistant, a recognition that transcended the previous formalities of interviews and rejections. Ava accepted the offer with a mixture of elation and trepidation, aware that this new role would bring her closer to the man who had once been a stranger on a rainy London morning. The challenges were many, and the balance between their professional responsibilities and their growing personal connection was delicate and fraught with complications. Yet, day by day, Ava proved herself beyond measure. She arrived early, stayed late, and consistently outperformed the expectations of those around her. Her relentless determination won her the respect of even the most skeptical colleagues. Whispers in the corridors grew from incredulous murmurs to admiring acknowledgments, and soon it was clear that Ava Morales was not just a flash in the pan, but a force to be reckoned with. Despite the high stakes and relentless pressure, there were moments of reprieve, quiet evenings when Sebastian would pull her aside, his voice low and earnest, to commend her on a job well done. "You have an unyielding spirit, Ava," he once said as they stood by a window overlooking the city, the lights of London twinkling like stars. "You remind me that true dedication is born out of not just skill, but heart." Such words were both a balm and a spark, fueling Ava's resolve while deepening the bond between them. But as time passed, so too did the boundaries between them blur. The professional admiration that had initially defined their relationship slowly gave way to moments of genuine personal connection. A shared lunch in a tucked-away bistro, a late-night conversation in the quiet of his office, and the palpable tension that lingered in the hallways whenever their eyes met. Every interaction was a tightrope walk between ambition and emotion, between duty and desire. And though both were acutely aware of the inherent risks, a scandalous entanglement that could derail not only their careers, but the company's reputation, they found that the connection between them was too powerful to ignore. Then came an evening that would forever alter the course of their lives. The office was nearly empty, save for the soft hum of a few computers and the distant murmur of the city beyond the glass walls. Ava was finishing up a report when she noticed Sebastian lingering near her office door. He paused, his expression a mixture of determination and vulnerability. "You should go home, Ava," he said, his tone unusually gentle. "It's late and you need rest." Ava looked up, her heart caught in a moment of uncertainty, and replied, "You should be heading home too." For a few long, charged moments, neither spoke. Finally, Sebastian stepped into the room, his presence filling the space between them with an unspoken intensity. "I can't keep pretending," he said softly, each word measured and sincere. "I told myself it was best to keep a professional distance, but I no longer want to be distant from you." Ava's breath caught as she met his steady, searching gaze. The walls that had been built so carefully around her heart began to crumble, revealing feelings that she had long tried to bury beneath the weight of ambition and survival. "I've been afraid," she confessed, her voice trembling. "Afraid of what might happen if we let ourselves get too close." Sebastian took a step closer, his voice firm yet tender. "I understand the risks, but I can't ignore what I feel. I don't want to be apart from you, not now, not ever." In that moment, the boundaries between their professional roles and their personal lives faded away, replaced by the raw, undeniable truth of their connection. With a hesitant, trembling smile, Ava whispered, "Then let's not pretend any longer." What followed in the ensuing weeks was a cautious exploration of a love that was as unpredictable as it was transformative. Their days were spent navigating boardrooms and business deals, while their evenings were filled with whispered conversations and shared dreams. There were challenges aplenty, a constant balancing act between the demands of a high-pressure career and the intensity of a budding romance, but together they forged a path that neither had ever imagined possible. Months passed, and with time, the once daunting office corridors of Ascendant Enterprises became a backdrop for the unfolding of a modern fairy tale. Ava's talent, dedication, and unwavering compassion earned her not only professional success, but also the deep admiration of those around her. Colleagues who had once doubted her capabilities now spoke of her in hushed, respectful tones, and even the most seasoned executives couldn't help but acknowledge the quiet brilliance she brought to every project. Sebastian, for his part, became not only a mentor and leader, but also a constant presence in her heart. A man who had seen her in moments of both vulnerability and triumph. Then, one crisp evening, as autumn began to paint the city in shades of gold and auburn, the stage was set for a final, life-changing moment. The two met at an exclusive rooftop restaurant that overlooked the twinkling skyline of London. The soft glow of candlelight and the gentle hum of conversation provided a stark contrast to the bustling energy of the city below. Seated at a private table, draped in crisp white linens and surrounded by the quiet luxury of the space, Ava and Sebastian shared a meal that was as sumptuous as it was symbolic of the journey they had undertaken together. Ava, who had grown from a young woman struggling to find her place in a harsh world into a confident professional with dreams of her own, couldn't help but feel a profound sense of gratitude for the twists of fate that had brought her to this moment. As she sipped her wine, she playfully teased, "You do bring me to some pretty extravagant places. I never imagined a rainy morning could lead me here." Sebastian's eyes softened with amusement as he leaned back, a quiet smile playing on his lips. "Life is full of surprises, isn't it?" he replied. "But tell me, Ava, what was it that you always wanted? What did you hope this job would bring you?" Her gaze drifted to the glittering lights of the city as she considered his question. "I wanted a chance," she said softly. "A chance to prove that I belong in a world where every decision matters. I wanted to build a life that was more than just a series of dead-end jobs. A life where I could make a real difference." Sebastian nodded slowly, his expression thoughtful. "And you have, in every way," he murmured. "Not only have you proven your worth professionally, but you've shown me what it means to lead with compassion. I want to offer you something more than just a position. What I offer you is a future built on partnership, trust, and love." A hush fell over their table as the weight of his words settled in. For a long moment, neither spoke, letting the emotion of the moment speak louder than any formalities ever could. Then, with a sudden, deliberate motion, Sebastian reached into his jacket pocket and produced a small velvet box. Slowly, as if time itself had slowed down, he opened the box to reveal a simple yet stunning diamond ring. Ava's hand flew to her mouth in shock, her heart pounding with an intensity she had never known before. "Marry me," Sebastian said quietly, his voice steady despite the emotions swirling beneath the surface. "From the moment you chose compassion over convenience, I knew you were the one I couldn't live without." Tears welled in Ava's eyes as she looked up at him, the reality of their journey fraught with trials, sacrifices, and moments of unexpected grace settling over her like a warm embrace. "I don't want to spend another day pretending," she whispered, her voice trembling with vulnerability and hope. "I need you, Sebastian, more than I ever thought possible." With that, the two shared a long, tender moment, a silent vow that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, united by a love that had blossomed from the unlikeliest of beginnings. In the months and years that followed, Ava and Sebastian's journey continued, a testament to the power of kindness, determination, and the courage to seize the moment even when it defied all expectations. Their love story, born on a rainy London morning when a young woman chose to help a stranger at the risk of her own dreams, grew into a partnership that transformed not only their own lives, but also the very fabric of Ascendant Enterprises. Through triumphs and setbacks, the challenges of corporate battles and the quiet intimacy of stolen moments, they discovered that the most important decisions in life were often the ones that required us to trust our hearts above all else. Standing together on the rooftop of Ascendant Enterprises 1 year later, as the city lights twinkled like distant stars against the deep velvet sky, Ava and Sebastian looked out over London, a city that had witnessed their struggles, their victories, and the extraordinary love that had blossomed against all odds. The future stretched before them like an unwritten story, full of promise, challenge, and the certainty that, together, they could overcome anything. And so, what began as a single act of kindness on a rain-drenched morning had evolved into a profound and unshakable bond. A reminder that sometimes the most miraculous journeys begin when we dare to stop, help a stranger, and open our hearts to the unexpected. Their love, built on sacrifice, resilience, and a shared commitment to excellence both in business and in life, became a beacon for others, a testament that even in a world governed by deadlines and profit margins, humanity and compassion could still light the way. And in every glance, every gentle touch, and every word of encouragement exchanged between them, Ava and Sebastian found the strength to believe that fate, though unpredictable, always had a way of leading us exactly where we were meant to be. As the night deepened and the gentle murmur of the city faded into a quiet lullaby, Ava rested her hand in Sebastian's, her eyes shining with a promise of a future that was as uncertain as it was full of hope. In that tender, unguarded moment, she understood that life was a series of choices, each one carrying its own risk, its own reward, and its own potential to change everything. And as they embraced, the promise of a new day whispered in the background, a reminder that sometimes love truly is a miracle. Thus, from the cold drizzle of an unexpected London morning to the quiet intimacy of a rooftop proposal, Ava Morales and Sebastian Carling's journey was a testament to the transformative power of compassion and the courage to seize life's fleeting moments. What began as a desperate bid to salvage a career opportunity became an odyssey of love, sacrifice, and the undeniable truth that the choices we make, no matter how small, can lead us exactly where we're meant to be. Every setback, every sacrifice, every missed opportunity had led Ava to this moment of clarity, that life, with all its challenges and uncertainties, was worth fighting for. And as she stepped forward into a future that was bright with possibility, she carried with her the quiet strength of a woman who had learned that sometimes the greatest miracles are born from the simplest acts of kindness. For in a world that often demands unwavering dedication to the bottom line, Ava discovered that true success was measured not in the numbers on a balance sheet, but in the moments of connection, the choices driven by empathy, and the willingness to stand up for what is right, even when it means risking everything. And so, as the City of London continued its ceaseless rhythm beneath the glow of street lamps and the hum of midnight traffic, Ava and Sebastian embraced the uncertain future with open hearts. Their story, a blend of passion, perseverance, and the unyielding power of love, would serve as a reminder that every decision, every chance encounter, and every act of kindness could indeed be a miracle. In that enduring truth, as the rain gave way to the gentle promise of dawn, they found not only love, but also the strength to shape a world where every challenge was met with resolve, every heart was valued, and every moment was an opportunity to build something lasting and beautiful together.